Greetings, everyone. This is Professor Theo, just recording this video. I intended this to be a forum discussion over both forum number 3 and number 4, but I'm a tad bit behind schedule, and I'm in the process of cooking dinner. So I'm doing two things at once right now because my wife is under the weather. So I'm just going to shoot this video for forum number 3, and I'll shoot a video for forum number 4 the next couple days. Continue to work on your interviews. Those are going to be due this Friday coming up. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. Maybe I can be of some assistance. All right, so let's just jump right into this. This week, the question we dealt with in form was, why are human beings so poor? Why don't we do a good job of attributions? And as you learn through this week's lesson, attributions are simply explanations that we apply to explain and make sense of people's behaviors. So when someone does something, or even when we do something ourselves, we attribute something to that behavior. We say, here is the reason why that behavior took place. And we learn about different types of attributions, some personal, some social, some a little bit more involved in that. So is it just the personality? Is it just the an individual's characteristics, or is it their group affiliation? What role does history play into it? What role does all these other contexts play in those attributions? And it's important that we recognize that we can't just simply attribute to a person's behavior one particular thing or one particular identity, because if you've learned anything in this class is that we're all multi identity. We're all multi cultural, that we have lots of cultures, lots of identities that make up who we are. And since we're complex, that we would not want anyone to simply look at one of our identities or one facet of who we are and say that that is the main culprit for all our behaviors, good or bad. So some of you chimed in. One of the reoccurring themes was that we're very judgmental as a society, someone wrote. Another person along that same line says, I believe that we as human beings are easy to place judgment on ourselves and on others. And this person was vulnerable enough to admit that they themselves have placed judgment on another person and did not take in consideration the reasons for that person's actions. In other words, we just saw the actions and we jumped to conclusions. Someone went on to say we can have bias or even false beliefs about certain people or groups. And if we believe a certain thing about a certain person or a group, it's going to influence how we view their behaviors. Sometimes the things that we believe or feel are actually about us as individuals. And those thoughts and perceptions blur the lines and make things difficult when it comes to how we judge other people. And I've heard this before, that sometimes we project. If you are someone who has a short temper, and because of your short temper, you act a certain way, if you see someone else who acts in a similar way, you're going to project to them or attribute to their behavior that short temper that you struggle with. Because that would make sense to you. Hey, if my short temper leads to my actions and they have similar actions, why wouldn't I conclude that it's because they have a short temper? And so that right there, that group of responses talking about how judgmental we are. What's interesting about that is it speaks to the fact that we don't simply judge, we don't simply jump to conclusions, but it also has this connotation that most often when we are judging, we're judging negatively, we're judging harshly, we're judging without giving the benefit of the doubt. So would it be necessarily a bad thing if we were quick to judge and super judgmental if we judged righteously? If we gave people the benefit of the doubt, if we jumped to the wrong conclusion in a way that we erred on the side of honoring someone. Yet oftentimes when we jump to the wrong conclusion, oftentimes when we talk about people being judgmental, it's in the negative sense of the word. Because keep in mind, making a judgment call could be a positive thing. You could see someone's behavior and say, I bet it's for this positive reason. But most often when we talk about being judgmental, is normally looking at it from a negative standpoint. Someone says that we make a lot of generalizations. Someone says that we have a lot of assumptions, right or wrong, and that we judge one way or another based upon who we think we know or based off of what we have experienced. This is important. We talk about our frame of reference. Oftentimes, when we make any type of judgment call, when we make attributions, it's based upon history, it's based upon what we've experienced. So if you've had some experiences, negative or positive, and you were able to determine not just what happened, but why it happened, then the next time that thing happens, you're going to rely upon those experiences. There's a pro and a con to that. One of the pros is sometimes experience and can generate wisdom, which can be a great teacher. So it would make we would make a mistake of ignoring those experiences. If you see those red flags, if you have a gut feeling, if your experiences says that, hey, based upon the last 8 times this has happened, if this has led to this, yeah, we should utilize that experience. But what about if we have limited experience? And it could be limited as far as the number of experiences in a particular thing, or it could be limited as in maybe we've had 100 experiences in the same area, but it's with the same people, the same set of circumstances. So all said, now when the people change and the circumstances change, those experiences change. And we can't say, well, I've experienced this 100 times before. Yeah, but you've experienced 100 times before with the same group of people. When you introduce new people, that's a new factor, new variables that we can account for. So even then, sometimes it's dangerous to rely totally on our experiences. Thus, we should be willing to find that balance between being wise enough to consider our experiences, but also giving new individuals a chance and being open to new experiences and new interpretations of those experiences. Someone wrote, it's easy to view things from an egocentric bias and decide based upon our own perceived normal behaviors. It's hard to understand other cultures from a headline or a small clip. Again, this makes it easy for snap judgments. That egocentric bias, whenever we put the focus on us, whenever we see our behaviors as the norm, and not only the norm, but the right way of doing things. Anytime someone does anything different, it's not simply different, it's also wrong. And whenever we make our norms, our traditions, our customs, our way of life, the central thing, that everything revolves around us, then we set ourselves up. Because then when we begin to be introduced to people from different cultures, and we meet people who have a different set of backgrounds and different set of experiences, we can't truly appreciate those experiences. We can't truly be open to embracing those experiences and receiving them for the richness that they bring, because we're automatically going to be filtering those experiences through our own. We're going to be looking at it through a lens that says that these experiences aren't new and rich to be enjoyed and appreciated. These experiences are somehow less than or other than in a negative sense. And we truly miss out, and we truly begin to look for the negative aspects in those individuals. Someone says, once you throw stereotypes, racism, discrimination, egocentric biases, and institutional racism in the picture, you have a whole world full of poor behaved humans with poor attributes. That is correct. And even without those things, even without racism, even without institutional racism and biases and things of that nature, the fact that we're just fallen, the fact that we're sinful, the fact that it is in our human nature to want to be able to explain all things, but we are finite, and our explanations will be finite. So we will rarely take the full picture into consideration, especially in a generation, in a culture where we want things now. So it's not just simply we want an explanation. It's that we want an explanation now. And we want the explanation that makes the most sense, and it is the easiest. It doesn't cause us to get outside of our comfort zones. It doesn't cause us to be mentally stretched. So what is the quickest explanation that makes the most sense? And we normally go with that. And that's part of that premature closure, which someone mentioned, that the first thing that comes to mind, the first explanation that seems logical, we go with that. And you never know, we may stumble upon the right answer. That first, most logical one may be the answer, but it may not be the answer at all times. And so are we open to not only take the time to observe, but are we willing to interact with individuals in a way that where they get the chance to tell their story, where they get a chance to share their experiences, when they get a chance to let us know here's the why behind the what. I think whether, it's me as a professor, me as a husband, as a pastor, as a mentor, in all the roles that I play, I have come to the point where I know it is vital and crucial that I don't just judge individuals based upon their behaviors, that I don't just judge based upon what I see, that I don't judge just upon isolated incidents, and even patterns. Because I may see a pattern. I may see something that's not an isolated incident. I may see something that's an ongoing pattern. And even then, it's important that I investigate to find out what contributed to that. Why is this person doing what they're doing, good or bad? Certain individuals behave poorly. They do what we would consider quote unquote bad things. And we want to say that they're bad people. And we want to say, here's the reason why. Some poor choices, bad upbringing, they're rebellious or they're sinful or whatever it may be. But we don't know the whole story. And even when someone is doing something good, we can attribute their good behaviors to them being good people. We don't know the agendas and the motivations behind that. There are some people who may do things that we would consider good, but maybe doing it for the wrong reasons. And so we can't just simply judge people by their behaviors. We must be willing to also hear their stories. And I think that's important in regards to what Christ did. As I was preaching this morning about the importance of fellowship, we learn people. We get to know their story. We get to know their background, their history. And we see, or at least we can begin to see and gain a better understanding of why they are who they are and why they do what they do. And I think that's very important. Someone says that our first instinct is that we want to just always know the answer, the answer why immediately. And it's much easier for us to answer that question ourselves than it is for us to ask the person who really would know the answer. So if I see someone doing something, it would make most sense that I give them the opportunity to explain themselves. But when I ask the question why in my own mind, instead of letting them answer the question, I just, it's almost like a rhetorical question. I ask why, and then I answer it for them. And whenever you speak on someone else's behalf in this light, so we're not talking about advocating, we're talking about when you tell someone else's story and deny them the opportunity to tell their own story, there's a great chance that we're not telling their story. It's a great chance we're telling our story. We're imposing our story onto their lives. We're interpreting their behaviors based upon what we would do. what we've done, our understanding of it. And I think that always gets us in trouble, and it doesn't honor the person. When we're talking about effective intercultural communication, one of the things we were talking about doing is honoring. And so think about this interview. How would it be when you're interviewing this person coming up shortly, and you ask them a question, and before they can adequately answer the question, you answer it for them based upon your own experiences? After a while, that assignment that starts off being well intended, where you are humbling yourself and you're ingratiating yourself to someone and you're trying to learn of someone else's culture, but you keep interrupting, you keep imposing, and all of a sudden, like, well, you become the interviewer and the interviewee, and it becomes your story. Well, we don't want to do that. We want to sincerely ask questions and hope for sincere answers that we allow them to come up with themselves. And so I think it's going to be important that we recognize that one of the easiest ways to be better at attributions is to just take a moment before we jump to conclusions, before we answer our own questions, before we think we got it all figured out, and investigate. Try to get to know the person through relationships to find out, why does this person do what they do? Why did they act this way? Why did they lash out? Why did they say this? Even when they do things well, like, why do they work so hard? And you may find out that the reason why they work so hard is because they had a parent who always worked hard. And that was a model. Or maybe they had a parent who didn't work hard and they said, I don't want to be like my parent. So even when they're doing well, we can still benefit from knowing why. What's the story behind that? And so I think if we just take time to really get to know each other better, to not assume, to come in with preconceived notions, to believe that we know it all, I think it's going to go a long ways in helping us become better at attributions. All right, this has been Professor Theo Williams. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to shooting the next one on forum number 4. Take care, and God bless.